For more than 70 years, the world has lived under the belief that power is restrained by law, that nations, no matter how strong, are bound by rules written in the aftermath of global catastrophe, that sovereignty matters, that borders mean something, that war is the last resort, not the first instinct. But what happens when the most powerful country on earth openly questions those limits? When a former and current president of the United States declares that America can strike anywhere, anytime, without permission, and that the only thing restraining it is his own morality. This is not just a provocative statement. It is a direct challenge to the foundations of international law, to the idea of collective security, and to the fragile balance that prevents global chaos. And when such words are paired with rising pressure on countries like Venezuela, rich in resources, weak in alliances, and strategically exposed, the question becomes unavoidable. Is the era of law ending and the era of raw power returning? In Part 1, we will discuss about the Trump statement, strategy or supremacy. When Donald Trump asserted that the United States does not need permission to act militarily anywhere in the world, he was not merely speaking off the cuff. This statement fits a broader worldview, one rooted in power politics rather than legal restraint. Trump framed international law not as a binding system but as an optional framework. In his logic, law does not constrain power. Power defines law. The only true limit, he suggested, is personal morality, not treaties, not the United Nations, not global consensus. This raises a disturbing but essential question. Is this dictatorship or deterrence? Supporters argue it is realism, that great powers have always acted this way, and that pretending otherwise is hypocrisy. According to this view, Trump is simply saying out loud what previous leaders practiced quietly. Critics see something else entirely. A rejection of accountability, a personalization of state violence, and a dangerous shift from institutional decision-making to individual judgment. The phrase "my own morality" is especially revealing. It replaces collective legal norms with personal discretion. In international relations theory, this marks a move away from rule-based order and toward personalized sovereignty, where the leader becomes the law. Now in Part 2 we have to focus about America and war, a historical pattern. To understand whether Trump is an anomaly or a continuation, we must look backward. The United States has a long history of military intervention beyond its borders. Iraq, justified by weapons that never existed. Afghanistan, the longest war in U.S. history. Vietnam, framed as containment but ending in catastrophe. Latin America, where coups, invasions, and covert operations shaped entire decades. From Chile in 1973 to Panama in 1989. From Grenada to Nicaragua, U.S. power has repeatedly overridden sovereignty when national interest demanded it. This is where American exceptionalism enters the story. Exceptionalism is the belief that the United States is not just another nation, but a moral project, uniquely justified in using force to shape the world. Trump did not invent this idea, but he stripped it of its polite language. Where previous presidents spoke of democracy, human rights, or global stability, Trump spoke of strength, dominance, and winning. His America First ideology rejects the idea that U.S. power should be constrained for the sake of global norms. In this sense, Trump is not rejecting history, he is removing its mask. Part 3 deals in international law, constraint or illusion. International law, particularly the UN Charter, is built on a simple principle. Force is illegal unless used in self-defense or authorized collectively. This framework was designed after World War II to prevent exactly what the world had just witnessed: unilateral aggression by powerful states. But international law has always had a problem: enforcement. There is no global police force. There is no court that can truly restrain a superpower. The system works only when powerful states choose to respect it. Trump's rhetoric exposes this weakness. By openly dismissing legal constraints, he challenges the legitimacy of the system itself. Supporters of international law argue this accelerates global instability. If the U.S. can act without permission, why shouldn't China? Why shouldn't Russia? Why shouldn't regional powers follow suit? Trump's defenders respond differently. They argue the system is already broken, selectively enforced, biased, and used as a political weapon against weaker states. In this view, Trump is not destroying the post-war order. He is revealing its limits. In Part 4, the story entered in most critical episode while Trump messages to China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Trump's statement was not just domestic bravado. It was a signal. To China, It suggested that U.S. restraint over Taiwan is political, not legal. That red lines are flexible and enforced by power, not paperwork. To Russia, it mirrored Moscow's own logic in Ukraine. Spheres of influence matter more than borders. To Iran, it reinforced the idea that negotiations are secondary to pressure, and that military force is always on the table. To North Korea, it confirmed that deterrence, not diplomacy, defines survival. In international politics, words from a superpower leader are not opinions. They are strategic communications. And when those words suggest that law no longer matters, every rival recalculates its risks. In Part 5, America Divided in Power or Peace. Inside the United States, Trump's foreign policy rhetoric exposes a deep divide. One side believes peace comes through strength, that hesitation invites aggression, that dominance prevents war. The other believes peace comes through cooperation, that alliances matter, that law, even imperfect law, is better than chaos. Trump's language appeals strongly to nationalism, to voters who feel the U.S. has paid the cost of global order while others benefited. His message is simple: why should America ask permission? Yet even within Congress, concerns have emerged across party lines about unchecked military authority, executive overreach, and the long-term consequences of unilateralism. This is not just a political debate, it is a debate about America's identity. The main thing in recent situation is Venezuela. Why it matters? Venezuela is not just another troubled state. It holds some of the largest proven oil reserves in the world. It sits in the Western Hemisphere, traditionally viewed by Washington as its strategic backyard. And it represents a government openly hostile to U.S. influence. For years, U.S. policy toward Venezuela has included economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, support for opposition movements, pressure on energy exports. These actions stop short of invasion, but they signal intent. In the context of Trump's worldview, Venezuela becomes more than a policy challenge. It becomes a test case. A test of whether sovereignty protects weak states. A test of whether resources justify intervention. A test of whether power now openly overrides law. The USA's action in Venezuela as signal, not just target. Whether or not direct military action occurs, Venezuela serves a strategic purpose. It signals to Latin America that alignment matters. It signals to rivals that proximity does not guarantee safety. It signals that the U.S. is willing to apply pressure outside multilateral approval. For many countries in the global south, this revives old fears that international law protects them only until it doesn't. Responses from regional governments have repeatedly warned that intervention, direct or indirect, sets dangerous precedents. Not because Venezuela's government is flawless, but because who decides when sovereignty ends? The last part of video deals with rule of law versus power politics. Trump's approach forces a final comparison. Past U.S. presidents often violated norms, but justified them within legal language. Trump questioned the language itself. International institutions condemned unilateralism. European allies expressed unease. Much of the global south saw confirmation of long-held suspicions that the rules were never written for everyone equally. So the real question is not whether Trump is unique. The question is whether he represents the future. When power writes the rules, Trump's statement, Venezuela's vulnerability, and the erosion of legal restraint point to a single global dilemma. If law depends on power for enforcement, and power rejects law, what remains? Are we entering an era where peace is maintained by dominance rather than agreement? Where morality replaces legality? Where strength, not consent, defines order? History shows us that such eras are stable until they are not. And when power replaces law, the final question is not who rules today, but who survives tomorrow.